The stars shine bright at the U even after a 7-loss campaign. 7 Miami players get drafted in the NFL draft. A number also move on to the NFL through free agency. We bring in Cam Underwood of the State of the U to break down these Miami players that are moving on to the NFL, but more importantly, who's going to replace these guys. And Cam, we first hit you off with a guy that I know that you just loved watching, and college football fans, regardless of who you root for, just in terms of watching sheer athleticism and speed. Phillip Dorsett, 24 yards per catch. What does the U do to replace Phillip?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. He's the fastest guy that we've had in a long time. He ran, 4.18 hand timed at Miami, and he ended up running a 4.33 at the combine. But I mean, he's a legit 4.3 or slightly under guy who outran angles. And he was actually averaging like 42 yards a catch for a while until some of the defenses made him or dropped that average all the way down to a nation-leading 24.4. But anyway, left behind are a few guys who I think can step up. The first guy who's been really a resurgent player after missing last season is Rashawn Scott. He had a collarbone injury and a shoulder, and then he missed some significant time. But the time that he played, he was doing really well, impacting the game, breaking down coverages. He has a lot of moves, so it's really hard to stick with him one-on-one. And throughout the spring, he did very well, trying to reclaim a starting spot by his strong play. So hopefully he maintains that through all the summer work, again, working with, Brad Kaya and the rest of the offense, and can either maintain the level of performance that we saw in the spring or hopefully exceed that. So that's the first guy that we're looking at from an overall standpoint. And then the game breaker who we need also to bounce back is Stacy Coley, who's a rising junior. I said it when he was in high school. I watched him play a bunch of times in person. I thought he was going to be the #1 player in America coming out of high school. And he was, freshman All-American, doing everything, kick returns, punt returns, had that nasty 73-yard reverse against Pittsburgh where he almost fell, and then he scores, and, just receiving touchdowns, scored 4 different ways, all kinds of things. And then last year as a sophomore had the worst slump of anybody that I've seen, probably in about 10 years, coming off of his freshman year production. So hopefully he refines or that playmaking ability that we know he has resurfaces the way that he played as a freshman. He gets back to that, and he can step up and hopefully help replace Phillip as well.
Some more lost production in the passing game in the form of Clive Walford. 44 catches, 676 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He moves on to the Oakland Raiders in the 3rd round. So your thoughts about Walford and who's going to step in?
Well, Walford did a great job, and he was Brad Kaya's security blanket, just like any good tight end is for a young and developing quarterback, no matter if he threw for 2,600 or 2,800 yards and 26 touchdowns. Sometimes you're just going to need to hit that release valve, as it were, and Clive Walford was that, and he's 6'4", 260, athletic freak, and he was just always open, and he worked in between the hash marks, and so he's always right in Brad Kaya's line of sight. So we do have another tight end who can hopefully step up and be the next great Miami tight end, Standish Dobard, who's from Louisiana. He was the backup the last couple of years. He's a true junior, also like Stacy Coley, who I just talked about a minute ago, and he has a lot of physical skills. Big kid, 6'4", 260, 265, kind of boxy but very physical. So he can impact the game as a run blocker where he's progressing, and also as a pass catcher where, I think he has some skills that also still need to develop. But he's really going to be that guy, that we put in to the Walford role to run some of those inside routes and some of those inside wheel routes that we ran. I think we scored against Nebraska with one of those from the tight end position. So, I think that Standish Dobard is going to be that guy who steps up and replaces Walford.
So with the heart and soul of this offense over the last 3 years was Duke Johnson. I believe he was one of your favorites, Cam. 1,652 yards, almost 7 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns, caught 38 out of the backfield. And this is a guy that unfortunately was the center of the offense during a not-so-great time during Miami football. So it's kind of hard to see those great players leave without having played in the really meaningful, huge games. But Duke was a good one. Your thoughts on the running game?
I mean, Duke was a great one. He's the all-time leading rusher in Miami Hurricanes history. If that doesn't speak volumes for itself, I don't know what will. But going from last year's team to this year's team, replacing him is going to be a very tall task. Because, like I said, there's no single player who ran for more yards in Miami Hurricane history than Duke Johnson. And what he did for this program through a uneven period of win and loss performance cannot be replaced by one person. And we're not going to try to do that because you only get a player like that every so often. So we're lucky that we have 4 players who are going to try to carry that load or split that up. And they all kind of have their own different games. So you have Gus Edwards, who's a big back. He's out of New York. He's 6'2", 235. He's down to like a 4.5 flat 40. And if you saw last year, he had a couple of long runs where he made one guy miss, and then, big fella gets moving, and you're not going to catch him. So he's going to be there. You have Joseph Yearby, who went to Miami Central High School. He's a smaller, shiftier back, but he runs behind his pads a little bit more than you would expect because he is kind of slight of build. So he's not going to run you over like a Gus Edwards will, but he's shifty, and he is tough running inside even though he's not large. So you have Gus, you have Joe. You also have Trayon Gray, who's out of Miami Carroll City High School. He was a high school quarterback, but that was more a function of he was the best player on his high school team, and we need the best player to have the ball in every play, so we're going to put him at quarterback. But he's really changed his body type from that high school quarterback into a running back, and he's been working really hard with Ice Harris to really try to get his pad level down, to really make his reads better, and to follow his blockers, because he's explosive. Once he gets a couple steps in the open field, I mean, this kid's a blur. So, he's kind of that power and speed combo and one back, and then the one running back that we signed this year in our recruiting class is Mark Walton from Booker T. Washington, where his position coach, Ice Harris, was his high school football coach for 3 years until Ice Harris came, just got the running back job or assistant operations job last year. So obviously that connection played a big role in getting him to campus, and he's kind of your do-it-all kind of back. He can catch it out of the backfield, he can run it inside, he can run it outside. Not saying that Mark Walton is Duke Johnson, but the same kind of a player who can do multiple things. That's the kind of player that Mark Walton is. And a lot of people that I trust who follow Dade County high school football, who've seen him play for many years, they said ever since they can remember, Mark Walton was always the baddest dude on the field. And hopefully he brings that into college. So, between Gus Edwards and Joseph Yearby and Trayon Gray and Mark Walton, those 4 guys hopefully are going to raise their gameplay so that we can approximate or exceed what we got from Duke last year.
And just to give the folks an idea of the kind of talent we're talking about here, Phillip Dorsett taken in the first round, Clive Walford a 3rd rounder, Duke Johnson a 3rd rounder. Now we go to the offensive line where we've got 2 guys, one in the first round, and Eric Flowers going to the Giants with the 9th overall pick in the draft. John Feliciano, also a guard, going to Oakland. So the 2 big fellas leave.
Yeah. I mean, the 2 big fellas left out, and Flowers, who was a high school teammate of Duke Johnson, had the look of a first-round pick ever since high school. So he came in and started right away his freshman year, and it was great to see him get picked so high. And with the left tackle for the Giants actually being gone because he tore a pectoral muscle, Eric Flowers could slide into that spot and start as a rookie on the left-hand side for, a storied franchise protecting Eli Manning. So that would be great. And obviously, would represent the U as we go forward. But to replace those 2 guys, and those are 2 tough guys to replace, from those, they played next to each other on the left side of the line. So Eric Flowers was the left tackle, and Feliciano was the left guard. So the whole left side is gone. And then actually, if you extend that out, he didn't get drafted, but Shane McDermott also left by graduation. So center, left guard, left tackle are all new. And to replace the draftee guys, because we're talking about that, at the left tackle, there's a couple of guys who, in my mind, could step up. Trevor Darling from Miami Central, he played with Joseph Yearby in high school and also here at the U. He's stepping up, and I believe he was first on the depth chart at the end of the spring at left tackle. We also have Casey McDermott, who's Shane McDermott's younger brother, who is a 5-star recruit coming out of Palm Beach Central High School. They haven't met the right tackle slot right now, but things aren't settled really, so he could play in. Also could play in Sonny Adogwu, who's a big 6'8", 330-pound player. He's a native Nigerian, and he's really just learning the game of football, but he's strong, has a mean streak, so maybe he sees some playing time. And also Jahair Jones was a JUCO offensive lineman we brought in, and he was playing at left tackle. And we play a rotational system to begin with, but those guys have been experimenting at both left and right tackle, so either or any of those guys could pop up as the guy to replace Flowers as we move forward. On the inside at left guard, it looks like Alex Gall is going to replace John Feliciano at left guard. So he, brings some experience because he's been on the team for a few years. So hopefully his level of play can be sustainable and can integrate in with the rest of the offensive line as we move through the season.
Cam Underwood joining us from the State of the U on the SB Nation platform from Miami Athletics, and possibly, Cam, Duke Johnson's counterpart on the defensive side in regards to just sheer production, just wrapping up tackles over and over and over. Denzel Perryman, second round to San Diego. So I'm not asking you for one replacement because I'm kind of guessing there's going to be a number of guys that are going to possibly step in.
Actually, because, Denzel started his career here at outside backer, and then he moved inside. But really, you're looking at a one-for-one replacement at the inside Mike linebacker position. That's going to be Raphael Kirby, who, like Perryman before him, started outside, and now this year is sliding to the inside. For the last 2 years, however, he was kind of shadowing Denzel all through practices. So if he, kind of rotated out with the second team outside backers, he would come in and he would mirror what Denzel was doing. He would make all the same calls. He'd go through the checks in his brain. They would go and they would, have their study sessions and things. So he knew that he was going to come in because he has good size to be able to play the inside backer. He's like 6'1", 6'2", probably about 230 pounds, I believe. So he could fulfill that role physically. So he's going to slide over. And then in his place, Jermaine Grace is going to start at outside, a weak side linebacker. And Jermaine Grace is a guy who we've seen, he played with Tracy Howard and Malcolm Lewis at Miramar High School, which is 2 square miles away from Sun Life Stadium. And he played really well last year. He was second on the team in tackles with 60-something, I believe, and he didn't start a game. He had the fastest 40 time of anybody who ran during the spring season or the weightlifting after the spring practice. I think he ran a 4.38, and you're talking about an outside backer who's 6'1", 215, running that kind of speed. And he has playmaking ability. He has very good instincts, and we've seen that over time. And his best ability, even more than his ability to diagnose and tackle, is his ability in pass coverage. And with spread offenses and they're putting mismatches, so a bigger receiver or a tight end kind of split tight to the formation but not in line, the linebackers have to be able to cover, and Jermaine Grace does that instinctively. So yes, Raphael Kirby, who's coming into the middle to replace Denzel Perryman, but then you also elevate Jermaine Grace along with Kirby to that starting weak side linebacker, and that combination with Darian Owens probably, or Tyreek McCord at strong side linebacker, that's what we're going to do, and it's going to need to be all three of those guys working together as a unit to replace Denzel, because Denzel could cover everything from sideline to sideline.
So, Cam, if I remember our conversation correctly from the spring, you had some concerns about the depth at the defensive line position. So Anthony Chickillo moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 6th round kind of hurts.
I mean, losing any of these draftees obviously hurts. But especially when, you have a dearth of playmakers at those positions, it's that loss is exacerbated, or the effect of that loss, I should say, is exacerbated. So, we're going to miss Chickillo, and I know that there's been a lot of people talking about how he was miscast in college in our system, and we had him playing at too heavy, and he's 275, almost 280, but now he gets drafted, he's down in the 265 range, and he's quick, and he's, doing all these things. I get it. But to replace him in the system, he played the strong side defensive end, and he's going to be replaced by Ufamba Kamalu, who is a redshirt senior. He was a JUCO transfer. He's a big kid, 6'6", 275, 280. And also Chad Thomas, who was a 5-star recruit in 2014, coming out of Booker T. Washington, who's 6'6", 275, I want to, or 270 he's up to now. So those two guys are going to slot in where Chicolo was along the defensive line to hopefully, replace what he did, and give us something up front. And, there's been a lot of talk recently about how the defensive line gap system works. And actually, one of our writers at State of the U wrote a piece about gap control just yesterday, which you should go read, which is great. But we might be transitioning away from 100% two gap, where the defensive lineman has to stay and then read the play and say, okay, am I going this way, am I going that way? We might transition to a little bit more one gap, which is, if you watch a lot of high school football, and most NFL teams, they play one gap, which is, I'm here, and I'm going through this gap. And I don't care about anything else over there, and I don't care over there because there's going to be somebody else to take care of that. And that is a system that people have been wanting to go to on the defensive line because it is less cerebral for the defensive lineman. They're not thinking and then going. They're going off of instinct. And the system is built to kind of cover those things. So, with a little bit maybe of a scheme tweak, and then, progression from Kamalu and Chad Thomas, and, maybe increased production from the defensive tackle position and the outside rush positions, the Trent Harris's, the Al-Quadin Muhammad's, who was suspended last year and is back on the team. Those guys Demetrius Jackson, who redshirted, he was a high school teammate of Chad Thomas, excuse me. Those guys on the other side, maybe if they're getting more penetration than the guys, whoever's playing Chicolo's side, there can be an increased production from that. So those are the couple of things that might help to cover, losing Chicolo, who wasn't the 5-star college player that he was as a high school player, but his contributions to the team were palpable.
Kim, every time I have you on here, I feel at the end of the conversation as though I am ready to watch some Miami football, understand the personnel, know who's out there. And now I even have this gap control article to go to, and now I can take my 1 and 2 gap understanding and take it to a completely different level. Good stuff.
Yeah, I love always being here, and it's great. So, just stateoftheu.com. I always try to just, publicize our site. We have a team of great writers. We've had a lot of great stuff. You can be a member. It's for the low price of free $99. We have great content, always free, out there at stateoftheu.com. So come join us.
Awesome stuff. Cam Underwood, State of the U. Appreciate it, man.
No problem. See you later.